and welcome to An Hour with the Candidates, also known as Candidates Corner on LPTV, Libertarian Party Television, a production of the Libertarian Party and Libertarian National Committee. My name is Pat Ford. I'm your host. I'm proud to be the chair of the Libertarian Party of Rhode Island. Joining us on the big board is super volunteer, epically abled, if you will, at petitioning across the great state of Massachusetts and Soviet Workers' Paradise, Rhode Island. Of course, is John Capso. We've got a great show for you lined up tonight. We're going to do a little bit of the unexpected. We're going to talk about, well, I call it realpolitik. Folks, we've had a few weeks off, if you will, since the election, and now is a great time to really have those honest conversations amongst ourselves. What challenges do state parties face? What challenges do folks who ran great campaigns, some who won, some who may not have, all of whom, though, message for on behalf of both a party and a movement and a philosophy. So we're going to take that conversation to the next level tonight. Joining us later in the show, of course, is Cara Schulz. She is of LP fame, as well as being herself an elected official in the city of Burnsville, Minnesota. But joining me right now is, in fact, the chairman of the Libertarian Party of the great state of Georgia and the source of, well, a few adventures going on right now. Of course, Ryan Thomas Graham. Ryan, welcome to An Hour with the Candidates on LPTV.
Thank you. I have to just start by correcting you and letting you know that no state is in fact great.
Excellent, excellent. And as
I believe we had a resolution of that to that effect in 2018.
Okay, so we are compiling a list of terms that we've not banned, because we don't ban things in the Libertarian Party, but that I like to use the word we've obsoleted. How about that? Is that a real word? So we don't govern in the Libertarian Party. We engage in stewardship. All right? And in fact, going forward, there will be no such thing as a great state. There is a wonderful accumulation of individualists who follow the libertarian philosophy and coalesce on a voluntary level to engage in activities that might, in fact, replace that state, all right, with the perfect stateless society, but there is no state. How about that?
Yeah, and a bunch of them live in Georgia, that's for sure.
A bunch of them live in Georgia, and there's a couple of them that, wow, not only live in Georgia, but at this point, one in particular actually rents space in the heads of about 47 United States senators right now, as well as party operatives across the nation. But we will talk about Mr. Hazel in just a little bit. Now, first of all, in the form of pure disclosure here, pure honesty, Ryan Thomas Graham is the only gentleman that I've shared a hotel room with in the last few years. Chairman Graham, if you will, or that's a bad combination.
Oh, that's
Mr. Graham, perhaps you can tell us about the 2.5 days that you and I spent, what turned out to be, much to our surprise, a great time, but also pure status hell.
Yeah, well, we went up to DC for Freedom Works. They invited us up to what were we going up there for? It was
price
fixing for pharmaceuticals.
Exactly.
Basically. And we ended up getting there, and it was a bunch of Republicans, and I can't tell you how much it made me understand why I'm a libertarian and not, in fact, a Republican. They tell us to change it from the inside constantly, and you spend 2 days with those people, and you're like, they tried to boo us out of the room a few times just for voicing our opinion on a number of things. Anyone that knows you or me knows that we don't shy away from our opinions. We'll let anyone that wants to or doesn't want to hear them, that wants to hear it. If they ask for our opinion, we're going to let them know.
Right. There was that magic moment when they were discussing the Republican Party's suggestion on how to fix pricing on drugs and why that one was actually better than the other party's prescription drug pricing scheme. And at that point in time, the entire room essentially turned on us and just turned on the hate lights. Because you and I, we politely, because we were guests, and actually it turned out to be a great trip because we roamed the halls of Congress, knocking on congressmen's doors. But you and I just, again, we actually had to have interventions later in the evening, which usually included some sort of mood ameliorating substances.
Well, so the interesting thing about that trip was I got to meet Jason Pye, who is the policy director for FreedomWorks, but he also was the public policy director of the Libertarian Party of Georgia back in the day. So he, came up from us and went there and basically, has admitted, you got to deal with some of this stuff. And I'm like, well, I don't have to deal with anything. I deal with liberty.
Yeah. And you know what? The staff at FreedomWorks couldn't have been nicer. And we're clearly, several of them in particular, were libertarians just screaming to get out. It just, you could tell by the looks on their eyes as we all engaged in mass indoctrination / Trump worship, because he was the man who was going to drain that swamp. But, but yeah, okay. But anyway, listen, I got to spend some time with you. It was a great time, a lot of laughs, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. This time I'd be armed and ready, though.
It was good to have a partner in crime, that's for sure.
Absolutely, we survived it together. So that's an experience you and I will carry, both fortunately and unfortunately, through the rest of our lives. Ryan, you are in the heart of it at this point. Let's talk about the Libertarian Party of Georgia. Talk about, if you will, first of all, your party structure within the state. Have you had opportunities to develop affiliates? And what are some of the blessings that have been given to you? And what are some of the challenges of running a party like the Libertarian Party in a state that has, well, like so many big states, has a diverse geography, has a diverse population, a wide swing, if you will, of hot button issues across the state. Yeah, you're the chairman. You're, in a sense, you're tasked with somehow bringing this all together and developing a coherent message and moving the party forward. Just give me the layout of the state.
Yeah, I mean, so we have people might not know this, but we have 159 counties in Georgia, and our goal is to affiliate every single one of them. When I started, I think we had like 10 to 12, and now we're up to like 30 or 35, something like that. And we keep on affiliating more and more, and that's how we keep on bringing on volunteers and finding candidates. So our big focus is doing that at the state level, making sure that our affiliates are growing and that they have what they need to grow. One of the challenges that we face is people think that we're like Atlanta centric, and we're not. We try to there we go. So that's our affiliate map right now, which is, it's grown massively. But like I said, one of the challenges is that people think we're Atlanta centric. I think a third of our population is in Atlanta, so it would make sense that people might think that kind of thing. But we see a lot of opportunity in other cities in Georgia and in rural areas where there are less people out there knocking on doors, talking about liberty. But it's easier to get the message out. So we've been focusing on building up all of those affiliates, empowering them and getting them to work.
The challenges of recruiting candidates, particularly at the state level, in a state, again, as diverse, as large, with as many media markets in Georgia as there are. Let's talk about that. And let's talk about the blessings as well.
Honestly, it's easier for us. People might not realize it, but Georgia has ballot access, but only for statewide offices. So it's a little easier for us to recruit at the statewide level. You get people that are interested in running and you tell them, okay, well, you're going to run for U.S. House. You need to raise 20,000 signatures to get on the ballot. We currently have a lawsuit challenging that, but people shy away from that, right? That's a lot of work that you shouldn't have to do. For state house, it's about 2,000 signatures. For state senate, it's about 9,000 signatures. But for statewide offices, so senate, governor, lieutenant governor, it's actually, we have ballot access as long as we get 1% of the vote in every election. So it's a little easier for us to get there, which is funny because everyone tells us that we need to start from the bottom and work our way up. And I always tell everybody, well, we would love to. Let me explain to you our challenges here. I would even trade. I would even trade the statewide ballot access for districted ballot access.
No, that's talk about the continuing theater of the absurd that is in fact ballot access in this country. It's so provincial. I always argue that and forgive me for a moment, that we just went through a process across this country in a variety of methods where, in particular, the Democratic Party worked overtime to make sure that anyone who wanted a ballot and could vote could. And I applaud that. I don't have a problem with the mail ballots. I'm not looking behind every corner for a conspiracy. But at the same time, these are parties that work overtime to move the goalposts. Look at New York, for example. And so we'll work overtime equally as hard at making sure that other candidates aren't given an opportunity to run. So, here you have the dichotomy. The real disenfranchisement takes place at the actual candidate level. And I would argue that for all their complaints about Republican tricks and traps that are laid, that in fact the Democratic Party is working overtime to make sure that people don't have access to voting. Because ultimately, if you're voting for only one or maybe two people, is that truly choice as they define it? No, it's not. What has to be done in Georgia, or is it just simply the law, and there's really no way around it, to get the type of access for state level, so that you're not in one House or Senate state district having to get thousands and thousands of signatures? What has to be done?
Yeah, so we actually did the math on it, and there were 60% of all state house and state senate districts that ran unopposed in 2018. We haven't looked at it for 2020, and it represented 80% of voters. So wow. I mean, most Georgians have no choice in the General Assembly right now. And what needs to happen is we basically have a three-prong approach. Step one is build up infrastructure for people who want to do it, to have the volunteers in place to just do it, right? Step two, we have litigation ongoing. We're suing the Secretary of State in federal court for U.S. House only, because that's where they have jurisdiction. But we're hoping that if we win that, we'll gain some precedence and be able to move it on down the line and sue on behalf of the local offices as well, the state offices as well. And the third one is lobbying for a change in the law. So lobbying General Assembly legislators. And in 2018, we were actually able to get a bill sponsored by 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats. A Democrat carried it. We weren't able to get a hearing, but we were going to reduce the signature requirement for all offices, for all independent and political bodies. We're called political bodies here in Georgia, to a maximum of 250 signatures, but it didn't even get a hearing. So
right. And but at the same time, and all the credit in the world for that type of effort, because I try to remind people that win or lose, every action that you engage in like that, where you achieve some level of publicity and some level of status, is a successful political action unto itself. Because the first step, and it's a long-winded, long-term battle you're going to face, we all have it, is going to be raising the issue in the public eye. So you can't measure wins or loses, if you will, losses in those type of situations, because quite frankly, every time you get in front of the body politic, you've won. Every time you raise an issue, you've won. Every time you point out the inadequacy and the failure of centralized government, we've won. And all of us have won nationally. So I applaud your efforts. I would imagine, particularly on the legal side, is you obtain private counsel. Is that expensive? Is that a fundraising challenge?
It actually has not been a fundraising challenge, because it turns out I think there's a thirst for that in the state and in the country. We've had so the lawyer that we brought on is doing it pro bono, but we're being charged just court fees. So whatever, when they require copies and stuff, and it adds up. It's actually kind of insane how much court costs are. But so he said pro bono, except for those costs. We set a goal to raise $20,000, and we have raised about $18,000. And we're actually completely in the black. It's actually been a really big boon for us to be able to take this one effort, fundraise specifically for it, and have it completely be in the black. It's a big win for us. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And from what I've seen, you've been able to use that fundraising as well to engage people by, again, illuminating firsthand the cost and the challenges of true liberty. True liberty being the opportunity to run for public office so that you can steward the voters and the citizens and the residents of Georgia's resources as opposed to governing them. So no, that's outstanding. And again, from what I've seen, when you have efforts like that, you give people an opportunity to get involved. And particularly now with the frustrations of how government, well, let's just say laid us bare so that when an episode like COVID hit, we were incredibly unprepared as a nation because of the presence of centralized government, centralized planning. But at the same time, people are revolting in states across the nation against these onerous laws that have, make up the rules as they go along. Seems to be the new feature of every state and local government. What is that the prominent issue right now in Georgia? What are Georgians upset about, and what are they willing to take to the Hill for?
Well, right now they're all upset about the Senate. That's what I keep getting all the emails about. Is I don't know how many people realize this, but we caused a runoff here in Georgia, and it's between the Republicans and Democrats right now. But we basically caused neither any party to get 50% of the vote, which in Georgia means you go to a runoff. And I can't tell you the types of emails I've been getting, mostly from Republicans who think we owe them something, which I don't believe that at all. But that's the big issue here is as Georgia has a national spotlight on it right now because we are basically going to decide who controls the Senate and who controls the federal government.
Right. And as a result, as I mentioned, Mr. Hazel was on the show last week. If folks just scroll down the Libertarian Party Facebook page, a half a dozen or so entries, you'll see the recording of it. A phenomenal advocate for liberty, a wonderful candidate.
I couldn't have asked for a better candidate for Senate, and the way he's handling this runoff has been. I mean, you see the genuine smile, right? I mean, it lights me up to see him talking about these guys.
Now he has truly. They have truly they can't control themselves at this point. He has got them dancing, if you will, to his tune and the Libertarian Party's tune and Liberty's tune, most importantly, because he's holding them accountable, if you will, for their stances on the issues. It is a dream scenario for the Libertarian Party, the movement, and the philosophy all in one. And as by your suggestion, by the way, we had him on the show last week. What role did you play in the campaign? My understanding is that you guys had that quiet conversation. Tell us what you can about that quiet conversation.
Well, he ran for office in 2018 as a Republican. He primaried Rob Woodall in U.S. District 7, U.S. House District 7. Right. And he had a podcast called his podcast now is Radical. He had a podcast called The Rebellion where he talked a lot about that campaign and everything he said, the way he got treated by Republicans for being a libertarian. I kept on messaging him and saying, hey dude, you're what you need to understand is, he was calling people rhinos and all that stuff. And I told him, when you look to your left and you look to your right and they're different from you, maybe you're the rhino and that you should come home. The Libertarian Party is waiting for a guy just like you who's passionate about his principles and is not afraid to get out there and talk about them. And what I really need from you is to run for Senate and at a bare minimum, get on that debate stage and throw bombs. Let them know that they're wrong about these issues. And when David Perdue tries to talk about how he's anti-deficit, anti-spending, anti-war, anti-privacy issues, things like that, tell him exactly why he's wrong because you're so good on this issue. You've been following it. You've been telling me why Purdue's bad. You tell Perdue why he's bad. We can get you on the stage with him. And sure enough, that's what happened. So
he got in excess of 130,000 votes as a Libertarian Senate candidate. It's and the important point that we made last week, and I'll continue to make it, is that he didn't do so and how many times have you and I heard this as state chairs, by taking votes away from the duopoly. No, he broadened the base of voters. And for anyone who's engaged in the pursuit of long division knows that if you broaden the base, the percentages go down. The percentages went down just enough that, again, the taste of Mr. Perdue's tears, if I can quote Mr. Sarwak, are in fact delicious to all of us. So
Actually, you got Shane Hazel quoted in Reason saying the same thing. So
it's a beautiful thing because, like so many libertarian candidates, I find it astonishing because the media, voters are baffled when they ask a libertarian candidate a question about an issue, and they simply answer the question. They don't have to think about it. They don't have to put the finger in the wind. They don't have to analyze it, crosshatch it, nor do they have to conduct a series of personal public opinion polls. No, they simply answer the question. And that's because they have a belief system. We have a belief system and we share it. The impact we discussed last week has the potential really to be history changing. You know, you're literally, he's put up, in a sense, with the efforts of the Libertarian Party of Georgia and his campaign, he has literally put up the entire future of the American government, if you will. I don't think I'm exaggerating, based on his ability to put the Senate in play. And the Senate being in play will affect everything from, Supreme Court justices to our foreign policy. Yeah, that kind of changes the world. And as a result, countries will have to react differently based on what happens in this election. What has that done for the party in terms of visibility, in terms of membership, in terms of the big picture?
Well, next week I'll be on Political Rewind, which is a Georgia Public Broadcasting. It's one of the highest viewed local Georgia political radio broadcasts in Georgia. But I'll tell you, I actually talked to David Schaefer, who is the chairman of the Georgia Republican Party, last week. I've never had a conversation with him in my life. And he was wondering, what they could do to get libertarians to vote. And I'm not afraid to, talk about our conversation. There wasn't anything that's a secret. And I let him know I didn't want anything to be a backroom deal or anything like that. But that we would be endorsing issues, not candidates. So,
Yes.
Don't be looking for an endorsement. And if your candidates can come to the table on libertarian ideas, and it's not hard to find them, Shane Hazel has been, screaming them from the mountaintop. Take some of those. We'll promote them. I mean, if Ossoff says something about them, we'll promote them. I don't care if it's a Democrat or Republican. It's all about the issues for us. So we're happy to promote and endorse issues. And what we got down to was we were looking at Purdue's record, and I told him, I just don't know what he could say that we couldn't come back and say, but your record, like if you want to say, well, we should reduce spending, I'd be like, but your record. If you want to say, well, we care about Fourth Amendment rights, I'd be like, well, but your voting record, right?
Right.
If you want to say you care about bringing troops out of the Middle East, I say, but your voting record. So we really had a hard time finding that issue for Republicans, specifically in Georgia. We know there are a couple of good Republicans across the country, but not here. And, we got to the point where we're going to basically put it up the flagpole, the federal descheduling of cannabis. So, we're waiting on that message, but and the MORE Act just got passed today in the House. So,
right.
The opportunity's there for them to earn our votes. I told them how to do it.
No, and I'm asking you this next question on behalf of every libertarian activist, and we're going on our 50th anniversary. On every libertarian who's ever, some of these folks 30 or 40 years, I got like Frank Robinson, right? Who it's the guys who walked in parades alone and were made sport of 35 years ago. The libertarian activists right now who just spent this summer petitioning on behalf of either a local or the Joe Jorgensen campaign, on behalf of every state chair who's had to sit there and argue his way into trying to get into a conversation between the party chairman. By the way, look at us over here. We're the libertarians. So I ask you the question of the ages. How good did that feel?
I mean, it was hilarious too, because he knew Shane from the previous election, and he's like, right. Well, we all know Shane, and he's a little hard to work with. I was like, I don't find that at all. He's very easy to work with. I don't get that. The reason Republicans think libertarians are hard to work with is because we're not Republicans, and that frustrates them.
Right. Right. And we just don't heal. I've asked folks like yourself in leadership positions time after time after time. The treatment of Ron Paul during his presidential race clearly led to the defection, if you will, of an entire generation of liberty advocates. Do you think the Republicans are, at least at this point, self-aware enough to understand the impact of their treatment, particularly at the Republican National Convention?
I have no idea. I know plenty of Republicans who are Ron Paul Republicans who are still engaged, and I don't understand. They prove every chance they get. They prove that they do not care about libertarian values. They only want our votes, and they think that we owe them our votes, and we don't. And they don't care to earn them, and I don't understand why. And something's got to give.
Right, and it's giving, and it's to quote a great movie. It's the gift that keeps on giving right now in the heart of Georgia. Libertarians really need to pay attention to this race because it's going to get ugly. And if anything else, they should call this race the Shane Hazel, if you will, multimedia fundraising race, if you will, or something to that effect. I can't think of anything witty right now, but because of the sheer amount of money that the national parties are about to bomb or in the beginning of bombing into the state of Georgia. I mean, the economic impact of this race is going to be astonishing. We're talking about anywhere from $100 to $150 million by some estimates to the campaigns to spend on media. National resources are being pulled in, favors and cards, and everything is being pulled in because literally this is the steel cage death match. This is the rock'em sock'em robot moment, if you will, of American politics, and it will change our look, our feel, our foreign policy, everything, literally for the next generation. It has that type of importance. And I applaud, by the way, what a great approach that you, Shane, the party is taking, endorse the issues, because that's really what we're about. Let's end the cult of personality on candidates. Let's make it all about the issues, which, well, it's simple to say. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Well, and we're out here proving that we're a voting bloc that can be earned, right? We're willing to get out there and vote. And 115,000 people voted for Shane Hazel, which was well above the difference that would have gotten somebody over 50% in the Senate campaign. And we're winnable, right? We're willing to go out there and vote, and we're winnable. And you just got to come to us with the issues that are winning, and we're willing to vote. So
exactly. No, that's outstanding. Have you seen any membership interest as a result of this, or is this really, we're really getting into just beginning phases of this sort of special campaign?
We actually have gotten a lot of interest in, all of our social media groups, and we're on Slack and a couple of other places. But we have seen an increase in signups. We get a lot of the hate mail and stuff like that too. But the increase in signups really means a lot to me. It lets me know that there is a group of people who feel heard and feel like that we are creating a home for them where they did not have a home before. So we're ramping up our efforts, like I said, to create more affiliates in these off years, and finding our candidates for 2022, where we have governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, all the statewide constitutional positions, as well as all of our state house and state senate seats.
Now, before we sign off on the segment, before I ask you to engage in what we call shameless self-promotion, I've got to put you on the hot seat for a second. As I've gotten to know you, I've watched you from afar, and also the conversations we've had. You too are an excellent messenger for if you will, for the libertarian philosophy. And your organizational skills, your presentation, everything screams a successful statewide candidate. What are the chances that we're going to see you toss your hat in the ring?
Well, so 2 years ago, I did run for Public Service Commission here in Georgia, and I received, I think it was like 120,000 votes or something like that, and caused a runoff, actually. So we are, I am willing to run for office next year. I'm thinking about running for a local office here in Atlanta, but I have not quite pulled the trigger on that yet. And I got to balance I got to balance running a campaign with my partner and family life and all that stuff. I got to get permission for all this stuff because
Yep.
it really takes a lot out of your personal life.
No. We all know how that goes. And again, one of the reasons why I wanted to, now that we're post-election as we go into this year, one of the reasons why I wanted to bring state chairs on, because I wanted to get people a sense of the personal commitment and the sacrifices that y'all make as administrators of parties, if you will, as folks who are, again, this herding of cats that takes place, if you want. I say that with only the greatest love and admiration amongst our libertarian family. It really is a second full-time job for you, isn't it?
Absolutely. Actually, my real professional, I shouldn't say real, my professional job where I get paid, it's actually ramped up quite a bit here in the past couple months, and it has been hurting me to not be able to spend as much time on LP stuff. And I mean, I'm so much so that I'm looking for a way out so that I can rebalance that and get more work into the Libertarian Party.
Excellent. Well, engage in what we lovingly refer to, and stick with us because we want to bring Cara on, but engage in shameless self-promotion. How can folks support LP Georgia? What type of candidates, if there's candidates out there already starting to get ready for 2022, just give us a landscape of how folks can engage, because a critical part of this show is to bring together the larger libertarian family. We always say every week we want folks in California to understand what the challenges are for a state like Georgia or Florida or Rhode Island, Massachusetts, wherever, and at the same time have candidates get, if you will, best practices. And we're going to talk about that in the next segment, but lay out for us how folks can engage with LP Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in Georgia, go to lpgeorgia.com, and there's a how to get involved right there in the header, and you just click on it, and however you want to get involved, you just click on it, and you can sign up. We'll reach out to you. We'll get you on. If you go to lpgeorgia.com/Slack, you can get into our chat room. We have a Slack where we just kind of have general chats and talk all of our ideas and like things that are going on around Georgia. It's where a lot of collaboration happens. And then if you want to follow me on Facebook or on Twitter, my handle is at Graham4, the number 4 GA. And that's basically, we use that for, I use that to get the message out for everything. And then our LP Georgia Twitter and Facebook handles we use for sharing a lot of our candidates and members type tweets and Facebook stuff. We use it more as a platform than as a message for the party, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Let's bring Cara Schulz in and let's kind of create a little group chat here. Folks, if for some reason you don't know who this is, there will be a session afterwards bringing you out of your hiding. It's okay. The elections are over. It's safe. Cara Schulz is joining us tonight. Of course, she wears a number of hats, not the least of which is being an advocate and if you will, something of a personal political trainer for candidates on behalf of the Libertarian Party nationally, literally around the nation. She is also famous for being, and again, we don't use the word govern, but a steward as well as a city council person for the great city of Burnsville, Minnesota, a burg I had the opportunity to visit in person just a few short months ago, in the run-up to the election. Welcome to An Hour with the Candidates, aka Candidates Corner. Clearly Shane and that campaign making national news.
Yes.
What are your thoughts about his candidacy? Watching it from afar and to whatever involvement you had, and what do you think about Georgia in terms of the opportunity this presents all of us?
So Georgia leadership and Georgia activists put themselves in the position of being able to do something like this. Opportunities and candidates and situations like this can come up, but if your state affiliate does not have its feet underneath it, it can't support it, it can't take advantage of it, it can't promote it, it can't do anything like that. So it was kind of a wonderful tumbling together of events. Really good candidate, crazy year, kind of crazy election matchup. You have Georgia's law that you have to have, that majority, or it goes to a runoff. So there were a lot of things coming together for that. But in order to take advantage of opportunities, you have to be ready for them. And Georgia is a really well-run state affiliate. And so, yes, they were absolutely able to maximize that. And now that they're on this trajectory, they'll be able to continue. It's that snowball effect in the right direction. So, I'm very excited about Georgia.
I mean, Cara, is it fair to say that great preparation and a lot of hard work can make you very lucky?
That's exactly it. Yeah. Yeah. And, and that's the thing. So Georgia wasn't lucky. They were fortunate. And there's a difference in the meaning between those two words. It was not a random thing. That was a lot of years of hard work by a lot of people to be ready for that situation. And they were, and they maximized it. So hats off to you.
Excellent. It's Cara, you travel the world, if you will, or the world that matters, of course, supporting libertarian candidates. Ryan, what, without the efforts of Cara and of course, Apollo and the rest of the LP staff, where would we be, and how important is it for her work to continue as aggressively as it has?
Well, Cara has been indispensable for our entire organization. Anytime any candidate comes to us with questions that we don't know, we know that we can go to her. And she's been propping up kind of an infrastructure at LP National to help us. I mean, we don't even have to go to her. We can just go to the resources that she's created. And that is, of course, working smarter, not harder, right? It's, we a lot of people have the same questions. And so creating the handbook and a couple of other resources and doing, I think there's like a weekly phone call, some kind of training every month on something, right, that somebody asked about and said, okay, there's a need, let's do it.
Right.
That has been indispensable to our party.
It's outstanding. What I love about this show is every week we bring together really the superstars of the party, some of whom have a very public persona, others that don't.
I probably have never said that to Cara either. So I'm glad that she gets to hear it.
Yeah, no. Listen, it's important. We need to savor victories in the confluence of events this year. As terrible as they are, could have staggered this party, could have dragged this party under. There are people in this organization who, by sheer force of will, refuse to let that happen, and we need to celebrate that. We need to celebrate that. We walk away from this election emboldened, strengthened. Reason Magazine pointed out, and a lot of us, of course, were hoping for different numbers. But Reason Magazine pointed out, I believe it was in an article today, when they talked about that the 1% or so, 1 to 1.5%, in some cases higher, across the nation for the Libertarian national candidacy represented a hardening, a solidifying event on behalf of the Libertarian movement. It is clear that that percentage, based on all the challenges this election represented, great candidates, challenging raising money, and challenging, if you will, getting on ballots, challenging petitioning, but all of that has left it clear that there is a solid multi-million individual base of the Libertarian Party that now exists going forward. And I am proud to share this camera at this moment with the two of you, because the two of you are a significant reason for that. And we need to celebrate that. We need to celebrate your efforts and the other volunteers' efforts. And we need to take a moment right now before the Sturm and Drang of the 2022 election kicks in, which is in about 20 minutes, right? It's
already underway. We have states that are closing for their filing deadlines for 2021.
Oh. Excellent. So let's celebrate that. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us tonight and during the holidays, and much love to your family during this holiday season, and to the entire LP Georgia organization.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on, and thank you for having Shane Hazel on last week too. I know that meant a lot to him to have the support of LP National. So
well, and this show will continue to work to bring people who have a message and have something to say to the rest of the nation. So Ryan, we'll be in touch soon, I'm sure.
Great. Thank you.
Cara Schulz, how are you tonight?
Very good. Very good. I managed to sneak in the episode of Mandalorian, so I'm really freaking good right now.
Excellent, excellent. And a happy Christmas to you and to the entire city of Burnsville, Minnesota. And of course, Mr. Claviter, who ran a
Yes.
noble election as a first-time candidate.
Oh my God, yes.
But as a longtime activist in the city. We had him on the show. Actually, we went took it to his living room, and we all sat around on the floor, ate barbecue, and passed the cell phone camera around and talked politics. It was an outstanding moment, not only because of the fun, but because that represented a coming together, if you will, under Mr. Henchman, of the entire libertarian firmament in one city to knock on doors for one mayoral candidate. And it represented really the commitment of the National Party to bring resources under Mr. Henchman's administration to candidacies in a very personal way, in addition to funding you and Mr. Bazell and a number of other people's services.
And that was amazing. And, Chris really appreciated that. When you have the leadership, the national leadership of your party knocking on doors for you, like working your campaign, that meant a lot to him. But that also meant a lot to our other candidates. When they heard that the LNC was there knocking doors for a candidate, that just, I can't even tell you how important that was. They felt like, man, everything I'm slogging through and everything I am working on and doing is acknowledged. Like, they understand it and they support me. So that was big.
Candidacies can be in their own way, despite the fact that you're constantly surrounded by people and events.
Lonely.
I was about to say very lonely experiences, can't they?
Very lonely. Yeah. Yeah. They are very lonely. I mean, you have a campaign team, but when you are running for office, you are standing out there alone. You have a campaign manager, you have your family, all that kind of stuff, but you are standing out there alone, and running for office is quite a bit like standing out in the town square. Oh, that's actually kind of sweet. Thank you. I know it's because of the headphones, but I will take it. You're standing out in the middle of the town square, and you are, yelling while naked, and people are deciding whether they're going to swipe right or swipe left, and they're going to do so really publicly. Right. So it's exceptionally lonely running for office. So little things like that, when people support you, man, that keeps you going.
Yeah. And I think of our local experience. We've got a great local candidate here, Billy Hunt. And he talked about once, the fact that when he gets a check in the mail, a campaign contribution, sometimes $25, $5, occasionally you get surprised by a large amount from someone in a completely different part of the country who you've never even met, who just saw you on a show like this, or saw you on social media, or came across your website, and were so impressed at not just the money, but they took the time out of their day to get to know you, if you will, virtually. And then in a time like this, when the world is on fire, if you will, take the time to extend that gift. And again, it's not just the money, but the actual gift, the support. That means the world to these folks, doesn't it?
Oh gosh, yes. Yes. I mean, you definitely need the money. I mean, campaigns run on money, so don't think that's not appreciated in and of itself. But the fact that someone, when people give you money, it really all that is just a unit of their life, right? It was their time and energy that they took to get that money. So, they're handing you that little piece of their life. And that's an amazing, very touching thing. So it's hugely appreciated. And whether that's $1 or $5 or $100 or it's a max, I got to tell you, there's times where you're having a day, and I mean, you are having a day, and you open the mail and you get something like that, and you're just like, oh, I can do this. I can do this.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, absolutely, and I'm hoping we're going to hear more of Mr. Claviter, because I get to have some offline conversations with him, and he's the real deal.
He is. He absolutely is. He was a spectacular candidate. He is a good advocate for liberty too. He was able to articulate it. He's a decent human being. He's really everything that you would want in someone who's elected, right? Or someone who is a leader. And when I use the word leader, I don't mean someone that is in a position of power. When I say leader, I mean that is someone that others willingly choose to follow, right?
Right.
Because it's a respect level. And that's what he is. And in campaigns, you can uncover those leaders. Campaigns are stressful. You get to see what a person's really made of. And he's shown. He
Right.
did.
Absolutely. Now, I want to talk to you for a few minutes about an issue that I think is important. Your work preparing candidates for campaigns, working with candidates during campaigns, messaging is legendary in the movement. And you individually are a significant reason why this party continues to advance. There are times I've seen your work, and you're one of those people through sheer force of will, refuses to accept anything but progress and success. And again, we all know that there are days where, wow, it's you're looking at the issues, you're looking at the news cycle, you're looking at candidates, you're looking at just some rookie mistakes, some surprises. It's just a constant tumult. But what I want to talk about tonight for a few minutes, I think, is an issue that we need to have that conversation publicly. And I'm talking about what happens after the election. Now, obviously, November 3rd, November 4th, depending on the year, November 5th comes up. A candidate either wins or loses. And again, I want to treat them equally because one of the mantras of this show is that regardless of win or lose, and I'm talking about in the last segment with the lawsuits and some of the work that the LP Georgia is conducting on a seemingly almost a routine basis to push the ball forward. Every action by a candidate is a political statement and has political consequences well beyond the immediate win or loss. And Mr. Hazel is the ultimate example of that. I keep babbling on about this, but one man or one woman wakes up one morning and by their actions literally changes world history. And I don't think I'm exaggerating when I think the real potential exists that Mr. Hazel's actions in support with working with the Libertarian Party of Georgia literally has the potential to change American history. It already has. So, we've had some candidates. Let's talk for a minute about the candidates who didn't win, who ran great campaigns, and clearly, maybe it was their rookie effort, maybe it was their second effort, but are clearly going to do it again. You can tell, I have a feeling at this point, your spidey sense is pretty well honed about, which candidates have, maybe it wasn't for them. No shame there. Again, God bless them for extending themselves and their family and all of the issues, particularly in a year like this, for doing so. But there are candidates who are clearly going to take it on again. And I've spoken to a few about the notion of creating that sort of political organization. Some would call it a machine. Oh my God, a machine. But that political organization that is so important to keeping them current and keeping them in the conversation. What are some tips and how important is that? And then I want to talk about the candidates who won, what they need to do. But let's start with folks who are ready to take another leap at it after maybe a narrow loss, maybe, first time out, maybe they only got a couple percent. What's the next step?
Some of them have already taken their next step. They ran a really good race. They impressed their residents, and they were then, even though they did not win the election that they were going for, they were offered and then accepted appointments to city or county commissions. So that has happened to several of our candidates already that did not win their election, but they are now serving their residents in an appointed commission. So if you want to talk about a way to make contacts and build your resume, also learn the ropes, learn the issues a little better within their community, learn what the challenges are. That's definitely a way to do it. But what I would suggest, and when I do talk to candidates, because after the election, we did try to call all of our candidates who ran so that we could thank them and see, what they were thinking about, what they wish was done differently, what assistance they could have used, just have a conversation with them. And yeah, there were several of them who were saying, you know what, I came close, I'm going for it again. Or I know where I, started too late and I did this and I didn't do that. And so this second run, man, I'm on it. So we already have a pretty good handle on quite a few of those candidates who are going to be running again. And one of the things I tell them is, while it's still absolutely fresh, write down everything that you did that you think went really well. Write down everything that just did not turn out well. What you wish you had done earlier, what you did that you feel you wasted time on, just everything you can think of on your campaign where if you were to do it again, what you would change and what you would keep the same. Because that's going to be your blueprint for when you run again. And candidates do learn. So I believe Kalish Morrow, she ran twice. And I believe Trisha did as well. Trisha Butler did as well, if I'm remembering correctly. And they put everything from their previous run into practice in this one. And then they were successful. I ran in 2014. I was not successful, but I put everything that I learned into my 2016 run. And then I was successful. So, that's what I tell them to do. The next thing is stay active within your community.
Right.
Be engaged, attend the meetings, still be involved in your community organizations, help out, show how being, live your ethics. If your whole thing is, and our thing is, voluntary solutions are where it's at, then you better be demonstrating voluntary solutions and be involved in them in your community.
If in fact I could jump in for a second, one of the hallmarks and the strengths of Mr. Cleviter's campaign for the mayoralty of Burnsville was in fact that he had served on the City Finance Commission and knew the issues cold. And he was appointed because if I understand correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong, he had just essentially a few years before just started showing up and he kept showing up. And then all of a sudden an opportunity came to be appointed. And here was this gentleman who is already a civic servant, if you will, who was willing to step up and immerse himself in the financial concerns about a community. I mean, we're not talking, Burnsville is not a small town by any means. It's a complicated, mixed, it's got the same issues as a big city.
Area. Yeah.
Right.
It is a major metropolitan area. We are within the Twin Cities. And our area is not what you think of as you think of a suburb. Our area is as economically and racially diverse as any area in the inner city of the Twin Cities. So it is not a bedroom sleepy community. It is a thriving city in its own right that is attached within a larger metropolitan area. So yeah, we have a lot of pretty complex issues.
Yeah, in fact, to put it in perspective, a group of us after the LNC meeting business was done, I was there just as an observer, and I wanted to, in a sense, take the show on the road. It was just about a 10-minute ride to where George Floyd was killed. Yes. And a group of us went and visited the memorial and just kind of tried to drink in the atmosphere and talk to people. That's how close it is, if you will, to the urban core. We're not talking about some far-flung small town in Minnesota, with what is it, Garrison Keillor called it, filled with bachelor farmer Minnesota farmers. Yes. This is very, very much the real world. How important is it, Cara, to if you lose, and I'm going to qualify that. I'm not going to ever say that again, so I apologize. Libertarian candidates may not win an election, but they never lose. They just simply don't. All right. They are messengers who, by simply running and engaging in active campaign, develop and deliver our philosophy to people, for many of whom have never met even a libertarian to begin with, which is hard for us to imagine since we immerse ourselves in it. But there are a lot of people out there to whom the concept of libertarian is just a foreign thing. So I will never say that again. But how important is it for those people to, in a sense, to try to be the office that they ran for, regardless of not winning it?
So when you're running for office, there are a ton of ways that you can win. Yes, you can win and hold office, but there are other ways. Yes, you can push the other candidates in the race on a particular issue that you're very focused on, that they then have to adopt that issue as their own, and then they have to perform on it. And we've seen that in many races where the Libertarian is the only one hammering on a particular issue, and they raise it to such prominence, and they push both of the old parties so hard on this issue that they have to adopt it, and they do, and then change happens within that community. So we do see that. We also see, as a result of some of these campaigns, that a person who was on the campaign says, you know what, that was great, I want to give my voice on this, and then they run for office and they win. So there's all kinds of ways that a person can win in their campaign. They can bring in volunteers. They can identify new voters. They can identify new donors. They can establish new relationships with the media, because now the media has a contact of, in the future, when they do a story on something to do with libertarian ideas, they know someone that they can contact and get a quote from. I mean, there's all these different ways that libertarians win when our candidates run for office.
Now let's pivot to folks who win and gain public office. There is an entire range of opportunities to folks who, and essentially become the incumbents, that may or may not exist for folks who are simply have to climb that mountain again. And what I'm talking about is constituent services. I'm talking about maintaining a connection via social media or mailings to constituents and citizens about their activities. I'm talking about, in a sense, not running a campaign. And in the best of all worlds, I would imagine, and I'd love your reflection on this, you've got a 4-year period where you're actually given the opportunity to, remember, we don't use the word govern on this show, to act as a steward for citizens, because we want to eliminate the whole notion of being a taxpayer, right? They want to support citizens' services and citizens' input. So what are some tips on developing, and some would call that creating a political machine, and I don't believe that's a dirty word. I believe that if you use whatever resources you can get to create and maintain that connection with the electorate. So what are some tips you have? And I'd love to develop this as this show goes on in the coming months. I think it's an important issue.
Yeah. So just like we talk about all the time in libertarianism, it's all about the individual. It is all about the individual. So it is about developing relationships built on respect and trust with the persons that you're going to be serving with. That doesn't mean that everyone you're going to deal with is going to be trustworthy. But what that means is your word has to always be trustworthy. And if you are someone whose word is trustworthy, people will work with you and you'll learn how to work with them. That doesn't mean you have to compromise. It doesn't mean you sell out. It means that you're not being a jerk, right? You're being a decent human being working together to solve challenges. You will be assisting your residents in your area. If you ever had this thought of, at least sometimes someone has a problem, and instead of just watching this train wreck happen in slow motion and you see the debris and the blood, you can stop it. Like, for once, you actually can stop it. And that's an amazing thing to be able to do. But, in building your machine, you're going to be coming into contact with all kinds of people who before they would never take your call, ever, ever, ever. Now they will. They will take your call. The other thing that you can do is, and I don't care what position you are elected to, and I don't even care if it's elected to dog catcher, because you have a title, you will now be able to speak in front of different organizations. They will want to hear what you have to say. You'll be able to address those organizations. And it will be on, yes, a topic that applies to them and is interesting to them, but you will be able to do it from a libertarian perspective. And you don't have to always call it out boldly. This is libertarian ethics. But you're introducing them to a different way of thinking, because right now, everyone's go-to, pretty much everyone, right? Their go-to is immediately to using force. How can we make X group comply with this?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Who can I get that can use a hammer? And what we're saying is that's not the way to go. You don't have to do that. So it's helping to retrain your community in thinking of nonviolent interactions, right? You're getting people to really embrace consent culture in more than sex, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those are the opportunities that you have, and you will make relationships. And when people start to see that you can solve problems, that you aren't there to just rant and say no and throw a temper tantrum, they're going to have respect for you, and they're going to start to pause and listen to what you say and consider your proposal. And, as you go through, yeah, is that how you build a machine? It is. It is how you build a machine. And it's through relationships, and it's through being a decent, trustworthy person who has ideas that are workable.
That's outstanding. What a great perspective. The notion of a machine that's built on consensus, cooperation, decency, not built on manipulation and power politics. That is, what's the saying? Libertarian AF. Yes, it is. It's a family show, Cara. But it is, and that's the magic. That's why, in a very large sense, there's also, in addition to the burden of being, breaking new ground as a candidate, being that maybe that first libertarian, both candidates and particularly elected officials really have a tremendous responsibility, if you will, because of the very large way that they are the trailblazers for the movement. For most people in America, you, Cara Schulz, I would imagine just about every single citizen of the great city of Burnsville, you were their first ever elected libertarian leader, weren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And when you are a trailblazer, there is a little extra pressure on that, because it's not just your performance at work, right? It's also you as a person. People are going to judge all libertarians based off of you, your words, your deeds, your actions. And the great thing is when we live our ethics and we show our ethics, people respond really favorably to that. And it's why, even though, yes, I was probably the first libertarian in my city that most people even knew, really, right? But in the first 2 years I was in office, people got to see what that was like, right? They got to see, because we live stream all our meetings, all that kind of stuff. They got to see what that was like. And I always made it, I always wanted to make sure that when I took a vote, I explained why I was doing that vote. And then on my social media, I would say not only what my vote was, but why did I vote that way, right? Because I wanted people to understand my thought process. They may disagree with my vote, but if people can see how you got there, they can live with that. Like, they can be okay with that. So after that 2 years, when another libertarian ran for city council, they didn't have a problem with that. It wasn't, oh my God, it's a libertarian. What does that even mean? They knew what that meant, right?
Right.
And so he was elected. So, there's 2 of us now on city council. And that also happened in Crystal, Minnesota. We had a few libertarians there. We have other cities in Minnesota where we have libertarians, and we're looking at bringing other libertarians on board. And that's the other thing. when we get elected to office, yes, we need to serve our residents. We absolutely do. But the other thing that we need to do as libertarians is we need to extend our hand down to other libertarians and help them put their foot on that first rung as well.
Absolutely. And by the way, what a marvelous lesson. The notion of explaining your vote, explaining your perspective, why you did what you did. Don't let others, if you will, develop a narrative on your behalf.
Yeah.
And at the same time, develop a bond and a trust between you and the folks of the city or town or state, whatever that office is. Create that bond where folks may not always agree, because we all know that
Right.
you're never going to get everybody on your side. There's and that there's hard, you are elected to make hard decisions, which may be unpopular, which may in fact cost you your political future. That can happen both within the party and outside.
May mean you have protesters show up at your house.
Yeah. It may mean someday some libertarian. No, but it's an outstanding message, because again, libertarians don't govern, they don't rule. They engage in stewardship, and a part of stewardship, if you will, if I can continue to use that term, is in fact interaction. It's accountability. It's an understanding. It's working on behalf of, not implementing to or condescending to or dictating to. We don't do that. We're libertarians. So what a great message, Cara. You know we gonna have maybe a little break in the action, if you will, for the Christmas season. And if we're all allowed outside of our homes without having to present papers in January, we will dive right back in. How can folks get in touch with you? And again, we call this shameless self-promotion, but in your case, it's what I'll call selfless self-promotion, because everything you do just seems to be on behalf of, in many cases, people you've never even met before. So you're a hero to a lot of us who know you, and you're going to be a hero to so many folks that haven't even met you yet. How can folks get in touch with you, learn about what you're doing, and gain tips, and when are those calls? So if people want to jump in, they hear this conversation through the miracle of social media, how can they reach out to Cara Schulz?
Absolutely. So if they go to lp.org, if you go down to the bottom, right, then it'll there's a run for office, and you click on that. So if you go to lp.org and then / and it's run-for-office, there will be a form there. And I did this so that I get your information, and so we can start to interact with one another, although it'll be run for office, not just run. And yep, so you go to the bottom and get involved, run for office.
Take the leap.
There you go. So you fill that form out, and then what it does is a couple of things. It gets your information to me so that we can start to talk to one another about what race are you running, what resources do you need, how can I help you. The other thing it does is it's going to, you get a copy of the workbook right away, right? Mm-hmm. And then it's fill in the blank version of a workbook. So, even if you've never run for office before, this is going to walk you through step by step, fill in the blank, like how do you get set up for this? Mm-hmm. And then you're also going to get, and I won't spam you, but every 2 weeks and it starts up in January. We do a little break. Every 2 weeks I send you an email, and on the email it has information for you, news things that are happening, services that may be of use to you. And then it also links you to past trainings that I've done that are recorded, and also the new one that's coming up. And so it'll list what the topic is, how to join it. They're quick. We try to be, respectful of your time. They are usually 15 minutes of presentation, 5 minutes of questions. And that goes every 2 weeks. And then those are recorded and put up there in case you can't be there live for that. And then also information about when I'm going to be coming around to your area and doing live trainings. We're going to be doing intensives for candidates and campaign teams. So it's going to be like a 2-day candidate intensive. We're going to be doing it throughout the country. So those are be coming up in 2021.
Excellent. In fact, that A perfect segue. One of the things I'd like to discuss with you the next time you're on, and we hope to have you on again soon, is in fact the development of the campaign team and what roles you need. I met some incredibly well-meaning folks, great candidates who thought, well, I don't know if I need a campaign manager, and I don't need to know if I need to raise money. I'll run it myself. I'm a libertarian, and those are noble.
Money.
Those are noble, if you will.
I
but
know.
But at the same time, I think those are issues that we need to talk about, and why, beyond the obvious reasons, why you need to raise money and what that means to your campaign, not just in your ability to finance ads and things like that, and what type of ownership and buy-in that breeds amongst libertarians everywhere, and why you need a campaign manager to speak on behalf of you sometimes. There's so much material there that we can talk about, and I hope we get that opportunity again soon.
Absolutely. I would love that. I would love that a lot. I really appreciate it.
Well, folks, we've been a great night tonight, and again, we're running into the holidays here, so I'm grateful for people's participation despite the impending holidays and all the challenges we're facing as a nation right now. Cara Schulz, she is everything to the party: candidate, consultant, elected office, and most importantly of all, a wonderful representative for our philosophy, someone who clearly personalizes it, and a wonderful representative for what work ethic can mean to the growth of our movement. And so I just want to wish you and your family the happiest of holidays, a happy Christmas, and everything that it entails. And I do hope we get the chance to talk again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Pat, for doing this. And I've been loving these candidate corners. They've been amazing.
Excellent. Folks, you've been listening to the Candidate Corner, AKA An Hour with the Candidates, a production of LPTV, Libertarian Party Television. Next week, a very special show, as if all of them aren't. But next week, we have joining us Marshall Burt, he of the great state of Wyoming. I'm sorry I said that again. He, a representative of the people of Wyoming. And of course, Apollo Pizzell is going to come on board, and he's going to talk about the Frontier Project. We'll be running as long as they let us every Friday night. We've kind of landed at a time, 9:30 Eastern. We hope that gives people an opportunity to join in from around the country. The shows stay up on the Libertarian Party Facebook page, so you can read them perhaps in perpetuity. And I'll close out with one or two quick thoughts. I remain convinced that the people that you meet on this show virtually will, in fact, not only be that mythical bench that we've often talked about in Libertarian Party circles and on social media, but I'm convinced that you're meeting right now individuals who will not only run for, but win races for the highest levels of stewardship in the land. And I'm convinced that during this program, you will meet future presidential candidates, you will meet future senators, and you will meet people who, like some of the folks we've had on the last few weeks, who will literally change the world. Folks, have a wonderful week. We'll see you next Friday, 9:30 on LPTV. Same bat time, same bat place, same bat station. We'll see you soon. Thank you.